Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again on the LYTUDIEP recap channel. If you watched the previous episode, where Diep fell in the forest and James did something that brought her to tears, then today's story continues right from there. Before we begin, if you enjoy everyday stories that unfold slowly yet carry deep emotion like this, please click like and subscribe to accompany me. Your support will help the channel reach its first 1,000 subscribers, a very meaningful milestone for me. These days, Diep's ankle is still hurting. She can't go into the forest or harvest vegetables like before and has to stay home to rest. The small house is missing its familiar rhythm of daily activity, and everything seems to slow down a little. James gets ready to go to work early. He will take Nee to school and then head straight to work. James arranges his things and reminds Diep not to try to do anything at home, telling her to call him if she feels tired. His voice is calm, but his eyes cannot hide his concern. Diep only nods and smiles to reassure him, as she always does. Little Nee runs over and hugs Diep, showing her reluctance to leave. Diep laughs and says, "Go carefully, Nee, and listen to Uncle James, okay?" For James, the familiar road is still the same, but his steps are quicker than usual. There aren't many thoughts in his mind, just a list of things that need to be done, hours that must be made use of, and expenses that have to be covered. He knows that Diep is at home, her ankle still hurting, and feeling sad because she can no longer do the things she enjoys. That alone is enough for him not to allow himself to slow down. The place where James works is a large agricultural collection facility where all kinds of produce from nearby regions are gathered every day. Sacks of potatoes, baskets of eggplants, crates of fruit still clinging with soil. James's job is to carry those loads onto large trucks, stacking them neatly and securely so they can make the day's deliveries. Each sack is heavy, requiring both arm strength and back strength to lift. Sweat soaks through his shirt after only a short while. James bends down, lifts the load, then returns to his position, repeating the simple but physically demanding motions over and over. He doesn't complain of fatigue, nor does he try to avoid the work. When someone asks whether he needs to take a short break, James only shakes his head and continues, as if his body has been accustomed to this rhythm of labor for a very long time. Few people know that not long ago, James worked at his father's company. A completely different environment, with desks, meetings, and decisions made through words. But since deciding to leave that company, James has accepted starting over from the beginning, using his own hands. The early days were not easy. His body ached, his daily rhythm changed, and there were even pitying looks from people he knew. James does not share these things with Diep. He chooses silence, the way he always does when facing hardship. To James, this hardship is not a step backward, but part of a choice he has accepted. Just thinking about the small family waiting at home is enough for James to bend down and lift another sack, quietly, steadily, without needing anyone to see. During brief breaks, James leans against the wall, takes a quick drink of water, then stands up again. His mind does not dwell on the hardship, nor does it compare his current life with the days before. The only things James cares about are how to earn enough for the days ahead, how to keep Diep from worrying, and how to make sure Nee can still have a normal life without lack or deprivation. As for Diep, a hardworking young woman who is used to always being on the move, having to sit still now leaves her feeling unsettled. She sits in one place, her ankle propped up, looking out at the familiar yard with a restless heart. In the past, at this hour, she would have been in the forest, accustomed to the smell of damp earth and the steady rhythm of her steps. Now, everything has slowed down, and that slowness makes Diep feel out of place within her own family's rhythm of life. Every morning, James leaves for work very early. She hears the soft sound of him closing the door, hears the car pulling out of the lane. It is only late in the afternoon, when the sky grows dim, that Diep sees James return, tired, yet still trying to keep a cheerful expression. Those moments make Diep feel even more affection for him. Diep does not want to just sit there and wait to be taken care of. She chooses to do what she can. Sitting by the window, Diep takes out balls of yarn and begins knitting each stitch slowly. Her hands are used to working, even though her body is no longer as agile as before. She knits small items, carefully calculating each one so that later she can take them to the market to sell, adding a bit more income for the family. As the weather turns colder, Diep immediately thinks of Nhi. She chooses warm-colored yarn and knits a well-fitting sweater for the child, each steady stitch carrying her quiet care. Then she moves on to knitting a scarf for James. She imagines him going to work early, standing among heavy sacks of goods, his neck wrapped in the scarf she made with her own hands, and her heart softens. Deep down, Diep understands that being cared for is a blessing. But she does not want to be someone who is only protected. She wants to stand beside James as a companion, even if only through very small things. Because to Diep, love is not standing still while someone else carries everything. It is doing one's part as best as possible so that no one has to walk alone on the path they have chosen. That day, James's father happened to pass by the agricultural collection area to take care of a personal matter. He had no intention of stopping, and even less did he expect to see his son there. But from a distance, among the closely parked trucks and stacks of piled goods, he suddenly recognized a very familiar figure. James was carrying loads. He bent down to lift each heavy sack, his shirt soaked through with sweat. His movements were neat and decisive, without the awkwardness of someone new to manual labor. Seeing that scene, the father froze. A wave of discomfort rose quickly within him, part irritation, part sharp ache. In his mind, another image immediately surfaced. James in well-tailored suits, sitting behind a desk, making decisions with words rather than physical strength. His son had once been a CEO, once stood in a position many people dreamed of, and yet now, he was bending his back in a loading yard, doing work the father had never imagined his son would have to do. Has it really come to this for my son? The question echoed in his mind, heavier than any spoken reproach. He stood there for a long time, long enough to see James wipe his sweat quickly and then lift another sack. Long enough to realize that his son did not complain, did not show resentment, but simply worked in silence, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The father intended to step closer, but then stopped. He turned away and stood hidden behind a truck. He did not call out. He did not ask. He did not let James know that he was there. And it was that very silence that made all the emotions inside him grow even heavier. In the days that followed, the father did not return to meet James. But he did not truly leave either. He quietly observed from a distance, as if posing a question to himself that he still did not dare to answer. He wanted to see how much his son could endure. He wanted to know whether this hardship was merely a moment of impulsiveness or a choice James was willing to carry for the long term. Every day, James went to work early, the same heavy sacks, the same sweat soaking through his shirt. The father stood at just the right distance to see his son working, but not close enough to be noticed. He waited for a sign of exhaustion, a hint of discouragement, or at least a fleeting look of irritation. But all he saw was consistency. James finished his work, wiped away the sweat, straightened his clothes, and left with a calm demeanor. What surprised him even more was what happened afterward. James did not go straight home to rest. He stopped by the school to pick up Nhi. From afar, the father saw James bend down to the child's level, saying something softly. Nhi laughed, took his hand, and chatted as they walked. That image was far removed from the son he once knew. No giving orders, no sternness, just an ordinary father patiently listening. Then James stopped by the market. He chose each bundle of vegetables and each necessary item with care, unhurried. Finally, he returned to the small house on the hill. It was not large, nor was it luxurious, but when the lights came on, another world opened up. The father stood outside looking through the window. Inside, James was cooking. Diep sat in one place, her ankle still not fully healed, holding colored pencils and teaching Nhi how to draw. The child's laughter rang out, blending with Diep's gentle voice. There was no rush, no tension. Everything unfolded slowly and warmly, as if time moved differently there. On some days, the father saw Diep take out a newly finished knitted sweater. She handed it to James, and James smiled as he tried it on. The sweater was not perfect, but it fit. Nhi clapped her hands in delight. The three of them stood close together, very close, very natural. Without a word being spoken, even an outsider could sense the closeness between them. The father stood there for a long time. Inside that house, a family was living fully in its own world, simple, warm, and complete in a different way. And none of them knew that outside, a pair of eyes that had once opposed, once tried to block their path, was now quietly watching, carrying thoughts that even he himself had not yet found words for. James had no idea that during those days when he quietly carried the burdens and came home with the smell of kitchen smoke on his clothes, there was a pair of eyes that had seen everything. For him, life remained as simple as ever, going to work, picking up Nhi, coming home to cook dinner, then sitting beside Diep in the small house on the hill. No need for anyone's approval, as long as his family was there, whole in its own way. Diep, however, sensed something very subtle, not through words, but through feeling, as if the air around them had shifted slightly, as if someone had stood for a long time at the threshold, looking in, and then left in silence. She didn't ask James. There are things Diep is used to waiting for until they speak for themselves. As for the father, he returned home with heavy thoughts. What he had seen did not resemble the path he had once laid out for his son. Yet it was a family that was living, loving, and truly being there for one another. And the question still remained unanswered. Now that the father has seen his son living for his family, will he accept it? Or will he try to pull him back onto the old path?